Welcome, everybody. My name is Karen Rosina Birch. I'm actually the Executive Director and Principal Investigator for the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing. It is one of the newest, I can't say where there might have been, that was one that was just funded this spring or going into the spring, but we were funded last summer and our focus is on next generation manufacturing. So as part of what we thought would work well as we met every other week with our partners would be to have a series of webinars focusing on our major areas that the center will be targeting. So with that, I first wanted to give you a little bit of background about, who we are, and certainly the grant was awarded to Tungus Community College, which is in Connecticut. So yes, it has a national scope, but the fiduciary and a lot of the, I want to say, somewhat, just the management of the grant without question is being done in Connecticut through our Connecticut state colleges and universities. And I do want to do a shout out to Wendy. Wendy Wilbishar is my program manager, is really, behind the scenes, the person that makes sure that everything works well. So couldn't do this without her, and she's great when we have any kind of problem. So certainly want to thank her for that. So just quickly, the first slide is just kind of an overview of a little bit of, Connecticut, our College of Technology. And then we'll jump into a quick overview of the center and, what the teams are. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail because we really today want to have Chris Dennis, who's our featured speaker, talk about supply chain. So with that, some of you probably are familiar with our College of Technology. I saw Monica Farr. She's actually on our National Visiting Committee. So maybe I should just turn it over to you. I think you know us quite well. But basically, the College of Technology is an umbrella that's somewhat unique in Connecticut in that it includes all 12 Connecticut community colleges and 10 universities, public and private, as well as our pipeline into our technical high schools and our comprehensive high schools. So that model was really created back in the 1990s and provided really, I think, a major um, model that has been recognized regionally and nationally, received many awards. And I'm convinced it was probably one of the reasons that we received a regional center back in 2004. And I have this on the next slide. And then subsequently, we've received additional funding leading up now to the National Center. So,
Karen,
yes.
can you adjust? All we can see is the top of your head.
Is that
There
better?
you go.
I can't see my picture. That's why. Is that better?
That's better, much better. Thank you.
Okay, so with that being said, our curriculum going back to our first NSF grants really has always been industry driven and really focused on workforce. So our 12 community colleges, the two pathways, one is on technical education, the other one is on engineering science. But since advanced technological, that whole track under National Science Foundation is really targeting technician education and stackable credentials. That always has been our primary focus. In engineering science, in as much as we offer that, and it's equally as important, it really hasn't been a major focus of our NSF grant funding. So just that's what the first slide is, just kind of an overview of, Connecticut's infrastructure and kind of how that works. Just quickly, our programs include mechatronics, machine technology, welding, electronics technology, and electromechanical maintenance. But we also do a lot in IT. So we do a broad brush that's even bigger than manufacturing. Although I can go back to when I received, our first center award, and I was talking with Liz Tellis, and she said, Karen, let's face it, manufacturing's everything. Everything we do in some capacity probably can be at least looked at under a manufacturing lens. So next slide. Our National Science Foundation funding, we had grants. We were probably one of the first project grants, but in 2004, we had submitted a proposal and we successfully were awarded a regional center on next generation manufacturing. And through that, large focus too on the perception of manufacturing, which I have to say is still a challenge and is still a major focus for us with the National Center. But we've also looked at, developing profiles for underrepresented populations. And that has grown even bigger too, since, it's both gender, trying to get more women, but also looking at veterans, looking at disabilities, second chance Pell students. I mean, it's really, really now even encompasses a lot different profiles and demographics. So we actually got 3 rounds of funding for the regional center, and I will have to say we literally just closed it out December 2021. And in 2018, we actually applied for a resource center, which was awarded. That is still active. And then subsequently last year, worked very hard, and we've got people around the table here. Wendy, John Birch, you would just come into Chris, the 2 Chris's, Chris doing the presentation, and Chris, and I'm sure I'm not going to say your name correctly, from Florida. They were all key players in that proposal. And certainly Well Dead with Monica. So many of you, have been so passionate about what we're doing, and we couldn't do it without you. So we really look forward to next steps and really being able to hopefully move that needle, get more, address the workforce needs, as well as integrate, definitely advanced manufacturing and, the robotics, the automation, so much now that really seems to be at the forefront. So our National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing, here's our goals. Um, we want to develop a national manufacturing leadership network, create an advanced manufacturing education repository, provide faculty and instructor professional development, improve the image of advanced manufacturing, and last but not least, provide resources and strategies to develop that diverse workforce.
So this will still have this is what we did for the apprenticeship webinar?
Just on this very beginning part, yes. And where does and give me one more minute, and this is next going to be I'm going to turn it over to Chris. I don't know if I answered your question. I think I did, but did I? I don't know. Um, anyway, let me just wrap this up, and then we can dive deeper. Our partners are major partners anyway, but there are many, many players in this national center. College of the Canyons in California, they actually are going to be doing the webinar that is on welding, focused on welding. Columbus State Community College out of Ohio, Central Community College out of Nebraska, Indian River State College out of Florida. And then we have our manufacturing extension partnerships, MEPs, and that's being led by Flate. We have diversity consultants, Manufacturing USA institutes, other national centers. We actually meet weekly, the NSF at National Center PIs. One of our goals is to collaborate and to get a bigger bang for our buck and not, reinvent the wheel. So we literally meet every Thursday at noon to take a look and share ideas, resources, and we're actually planning a big event at the Mall of America. They have a 50th anniversary, and we're really looking at, all of our centers, our national centers, basically participating in a week-long technology initiative. So stay tuned on that. And last but not least, certainly we have other centers, other projects, other consultants doing professional skills, which is also key for us. Looking at pedagogy, are there different profiles and ways, to potentially model these manufacturing programs? And again, with the pandemic, moving things into that virtual environment, how does that work? What is working? What isn't working? The idea of micro credentials, badges. I mean, all of that is certainly something, or ideas and next steps that we want to make sure we're at least having our finger on, or our finger on the pulse, as they say. And last but not least, these centers, all of our ATE initiatives need to be industry focused. So we've worked very hard with making sure that we do have industry representation. So next slide. In fact, when we wrote this proposal the year before, we actually surveyed, we did a national survey and identified different technology teams that really industry said, these are areas that we need you to basically include in this center in terms of having teams that look at, KSAs, whatever the case might be. So the teams, again, is a design team, a fabrication team, a processing team, supply chain logistics and quality control team, and industry 4.0. So our webinar series is going to be on each one of these teams. And Chris Dennis, I think he drew the short straw, but we're going to say we know that he's got a lot to say and super excited to hear his presentation. He's actually the team lead for the supply chain logistics and quality control. And I should also say to you, we do have a whole nother set of teams that are looking at, some of the academic focused areas as well as professional skills. So we're planning on making another series that will be focused on more of our academic and other related topics. So with that, and no further ado, I will turn it over to Dennis. And if you have questions, put them in the chat. Wendy and I will both try to be monitoring that. But we do, if there's things that you would like answered, either, maybe at that, if it's relevant immediately, we'll interrupt Dennis. Otherwise, I would say we'll answer them at the end of his presentation. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. And as Karen mentioned, my name's Chris Dennis. I'm an instructor at Columbus State Community College. I've only been in academia for I'm in my 4th year now. I'm actually in my tenure year. Prior to that, I worked in the automotive industry for 25 years in various supply chain management roles. Out of college, I started as an electrical buyer, and I left industry as a supply chain director. And when my chair contacted me and asked me if I wanted to be a part of the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing, I immediately became really excited because this is where I lived my life in manufacturing. It's really important to me. And it's really important to me that Ohio, the state I'm in, and the country as a whole, that we become better manufacturers and that we once again lead the world in manufacturing. So I had a couple of cool videos in my presentation to show you today, but unfortunately I didn't test those out early enough, and I had to replace those with pictures. So I wanted to mention that first off. At Columbus State Community College, I teach supply chain management principles, procurement negotiations, international business, as well as logistics engineering technology and IT and logistics. And I'll talk about our LET, or logistics engineering technology program, later in the presentation. First off, we get this as supply chain teachers. We get this question often. And the word supply chain is sometimes used synonymously as logistics, but we created this here. We call it the egg, and this is just a tool that we use in order to explain the supply chain to people. Now, since COVID, March of 20, many people now have a very good understanding of what the supply chain is, but I still feel like it's worth the time. We think of supply chain management as controlling the entire supply chain and everything inside of it, which would be transportation, logistics management, as well as, logistics management, inside of that, transportation and distribution. Our students we have 2 separate programs: supply chain management as well as logistics engineering technology. The supply chain management side is more an administrative program, whereas the logistics engineering technology deals more with the technical side of the supply chain and giving our students that language so that they're not actually the technicians that are working in the distribution centers, but they're the supervisors or the mid-level managers that have to be able to communicate with the technical people in the distribution center. So what I'm going to share with you today really comes down to current supply chain management problems, possible solutions to those problems, and then I'm going to let you know what we are doing at Columbus State in order to combat those problems. Now, I don't want to waste anyone's time. Maybe some of you are already doing this, but my hope is that if anything in this presentation can help you improve your supply chain program, that is my hope. Why is this so important to me and Ohio? Central Ohio is the supply chain is very important and employs a lot of our workers here in Central Ohio. And the reason for that is here in Columbus, we're a 10-hour drive from 50% of the U.S. population, 50% of the U.S. manufacturing capacity, as well as 50% of the U.S. headquarters of U.S. operations. And we're also that same 10-hour drive away from a significant portion of the Canadian population manufacturing capacity. So it is very important to our economy here in Ohio, and our companies are now struggling. And I'm sure you have a lot of the same stories wherever you're from. We are short workers. We're short skilled labor as well as general labor. We have hundreds of distribution centers here in Franklin County and more coming up all the time. We just got an announcement last week that Intel was going to build a gigantic facility here in Central Ohio. So we're trying our best to make sure that we serve our corporate partners and that we provide them with good supply chain administrators as well as supply chain technicians. These are just some of the companies that we work with here in Central Ohio, and we provide supply chain and logistics students to them through Earn and Learn program or after graduation. And unfortunately, there's some big companies that got missed into this slide. So I want to mention Honda Manufacturing. Honda of America Manufacturing is right here in Central Ohio, and many of their suppliers have moved here also over the last 30 years. So that's where I grew up, per se, in the automotive space. And yeah, there aren't any automotive companies on here, so sorry about that. But you can see there's some very recognizable names, and I'm sure there's distribution centers close to you for some of these companies. Now, one thing we wanted to do, and this is through another National Science Foundation grant, is we wanted to pull together educators, government leaders, as well as industry leaders. And we wanted to get them together and see what it is that we could do to help them. What could we change? How could we change our curriculum? What new programs could we start? And this OSCAN, the Ohio Supply Chain Academic Network, it's about 50 members at this point, been going strong for about 2 years. We have we've just started a website, and we have made adjustments to our program based on the information that we've learned in this Supply Chain Academic Network. Now, many of these members were already a part of our advisory board, and they are the group that recommended us that we start the Logistics Engineering Technology program that we'll discuss later. All right, now let's switch gears and let's talk about COVID-19 and the supply chain crisis. So we all know there have been many more shortages over the last 2 years than I know I've seen in my lifetime. Toilet paper, soft drinks, cleaning. I couldn't get bleach wipes for about 6 months after COVID-19 started. And you're still seeing shortages. I still see empty shelves in the store. And a lot of those problems have to do with shortage of manpower, shortage of trucks to move the freight. You all probably know about the congestion at the West Coast ports, some at the East Coast ports as well, and as well as many people being sick and unable to work. And those are just some of the reasons that we know we've had these problems. But if you look at the graph, the Global Container Freight Index that's showing right there, you can also see that we spent a lot more money. The consumer patterns have changed incredibly, actually, since the beginning of COVID. And not all of these companies were ready to provide everything that the consumer needed. Another thing that gets mentioned here is the global chip shortage. That has not as much to do with COVID-19, but it is affecting all of us. It's hard today to go and be able to buy a car or any advanced electronics due to this global chip shortage. So this, in combination with the COVID-19 impact, has really affected the supply chain and the supply chain, you being able to count on the supply chain. So we ask ourselves, how can we play a part in the improvement of the supply chain? Well, these are just some ideas that these come out of OSCAN, the Ohio Supply Chain Academic Network that I mentioned, some keys to improving the global supply chain. Now, I understand that most of these things, in fact, are probably beyond our reach as one institution, but it's important that we have constant communication of supply chain status throughout throughout industry, and that we're all talking about it, so that we're all able to work on it. Because one institution, two institutions, 10 institutions alone aren't going to be able to fix this problem. One of the things that we're trying to do is utilizing the latest technology to improve supply chain throughput. Now, bigger ships than ever. I'll show you one here. Carry about their TEU, or how many containers they can hold, 24,000. I mean, just huge freighter ships, as well as the usage of drones, robots, and IT solutions throughout the supply chain, from the supply overseas, the supply here in the United States, through the warehouses, distribution centers, and manufacturing facilities. It's important that we adopt the latest automation solutions in order to expedite the supply chain process. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. We also need to make sure that we are educating supply chain administrators so that they're able to jump in, improve supply chain design, and they're able to improve long-term planning so that we no longer have problems like we had this time. I don't think, if another COVID-19 came along, I would hope that we were a little bit better prepared. However, it is hard. You can't have inventory all over the world just sitting there. Companies can't afford that, but we still want to make sure that we're always improving our long-term planning processes. Also, we want to educate supply chain technicians. This is a newer concept, and this is what our LET program was meant to meet this challenge. But we need better technicians in order to improve the design of supply chain operations. Here is that the Ever Ace is what it's called, the ship. The voyage, its maiden voyage, that is, was in July of 2021. The TEU for this ship is over 23,000. Now, there's also another ship that is being manufactured right now that actually the Panama Canal won't even be able to handle the ship of this size. And it's only been a few years since the Panama Canal was expanded. So now it's sooner or later going to need to be expanded again so that it's not obsolete. President Biden early in his administration also increased the hours that warehouses and the brokers and customs agents and the offloaders of these cargo ships out at the West Coast. That's one thing, but we're going to have to continue that and even do more of that throughout the supply chain. It doesn't do much good if you process all the ocean containers through the ports quickly if you don't have trucks to move those or trains to move those ocean containers to their destination. Another technology that we get questions about this, well, I'm not sure why that video is there, but nevertheless, oops, sorry about that. The usage of robots. We get contacted a lot by companies that are interested in different types. There's a vast array of different robots that you can use in your distribution facilities and warehouses. The accidental video that's showing on there that I won't play, that's actually one system that's available right now, where below those robots there are slots where containers are held. I can give you an example of a company that I helped with. They handled cosmetics and personal care items. So for all of their web orders, they would have these slots. You can see the white boxes on top. Well, the robots, the system itself will move those boxes to get the ones you need to the top, and those robots will then pick it and move it down to the packer so that it can get shipped out and to the final customer. Those are really, really fast systems, and they're also smart, meaning they get better as they learn as they go further. They learn which products are the most important. They bring those to the top. The ones that are less purchased, they move those to the bottom. The slide actually shows robots that are similar to the ones that get used at Amazon facilities, and they move carts around. And these robots help alleviate some of the pain from manpower shortages, and they also improve quality. Utilizing robots and automation in the supply chain. Distribution centers are becoming more automated, and they're closely now resemble a lot of manufacturing centers. Robots are now being used to load and unload containers and tractor trailers. Robots are now being used in distribution centers and warehouses to increase throughputs and help to ease manpower concerns. Robots, I've seen one facility here in Central Ohio that I can think of, and they weren't a high throughput distribution center. However, they were having some serious manpower problems. So what they did after some research, and we worked with them a little bit through our MEP, was they purchased small robots that did nothing except take things to people. For instance, someone would pick an envelope, put it on the robot, the carrier of the robot, press in a location number into that robot. It would take that package back to the packer. So there's a lot of uses now in the supply chain for robots. With the use of this automation, it's also important that we now have highly skilled personnel in warehouses and distribution centers. And that's where the LET program and supply chain automation programs across the country come into play. Drones. This used to be, well, the video came back. Drones. The drones are being tested. I know there's a facility close to here, former DHL airport that they left, that Amazon has purchased. And Amazon uses that facility for many different reasons, but one is drone research. It's not highly used now, but I can see that changing in the years ahead. Sorry, these videos, I thought we got rid of them, but yep, there's the one that I deleted from this one. So driverless vehicles already being used. There's a video online you can watch where the Budweiser factory in Missouri is already using driverless semis in order to move freight around for them. The law right now stipulates that someone still has to be in the cab of the truck, but as the technology improves, we know this will change. This technology could easily help to all the suffering that we have due to driver shortages. All right. So some of the things that we thought, another thing that we thought we needed to do, our program and a lot of colleges don't have ERP or MIS. ERP is Enterprise Resource Planning Software, and a similar to ERP is MIS. That's a newer acronym they're using, Management Information Systems. These systems can absolutely revolutionize supply chains by sharing information quickly, by storing accurate information, and by having appropriate forecasts and inventories and information that you can count on. With the help of Kansas State University, we are now offering a new MRP class at Columbus State Community College. ERP class, sorry. MRP is a module inside of ERP. But Kansas State University put together this class for master's level students. So of course we're a 2-year institution. So I had to take their information, cut it back, change it around. But this course utilizes J.D. Edwards ERP software. J.D. Edwards used to be an independent company. It's now owned by not SAP, but Oracle. It's a mid-sized company, ERP software, and the course, the students pay a very small fee. They get, they're able to access via the web. They're able to access a J.D. Edwards test system. This course is available if anyone is interested. I personally can't give it away, but Kansas State University already has. Columbus State Community College is using it, as well as Purdue University is using it. And there's one other 4-year institution, but I can't think of what that one is now. But the course is set up so that the student is able to see every ERP, every module that would be used in an ERP system, which would be things like accounting, purchasing, receiving, production, and so on and so forth. Any department that you would see in a manufacturing facility. Each module is covered in that 16-week course. Now, I've spoke to you about the LET program, the Logistics Engineering Technology program at Columbus State Community College. This is a new degree program created through a National Science Foundation grant, and this was to not train technicians, but instead create high-level mid-managers that have an understanding of the 3 different categories that make a good mid-level manager in a distribution center, and that is IT, supply chain theory, as well as some basic knowledge of electrical engineering, motors, controls, and PLC programming. As you can see in year 1, they're focusing on a lot of their general classes, but they're also getting Excel, Excel 2, they're getting some of their supply chain management classes. So you're seeing the first year is basically a lot of IT and a lot of supply chain. Year number 2, you're going to see some ENGT courses. That's engineering technology. You've got still some supply chain management, IT courses, as well as in the last semester, more engineering courses and more supply chain management courses. We wanted to give, well, not we wanted, our corporate partners asked us to put together a program where they could focus on these 3 areas, and they felt that those would be the best, those would create the best possible candidates to run their distribution centers to improve their supply chains. Now, if everyone hasn't heard of this, one tool that we're using in order to qualify our LET techs or our mid-level managers, supervisors in a distribution center is through the NSF grant, we've purchased an Amatrol Logistics Skill Boss. Amatrol is the name of the company. They create a lot of different equipment for education, and this equipment simulates all of the technology that you would see in a modern distribution center. The original reason for this, the creation of this Skill Boss, was MSSC, Manufacturing Skills Council. I don't remember what the first S is for, but they worked with Amatrol to build them a piece of equipment that they could use to test supply chain automation technicians. And they created this machine. I saw it the first time 2 years ago at a National Center meeting, National Center for Supply Chain Automation. And now they are churning these out. I was at the factory back in May, and they are making a lot of these for different distribution centers who want them to train their techs, and a lot of educational institutions like mine are purchasing them to train their students. And you can still use this piece of equipment to test your technician candidates so that they can get their MSAC certifications. One thing it's not showing here is there's also a cabinet that goes on the side of the machine that has all of your wire connections and your PLC, your variable frequency driver. Those things are there for your technicians as well. So, on behalf of the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing, I would like to thank you for attending our first webinar. I had planned on finishing about 15 minutes early so that we could take questions if there were any. I'm a little ahead of schedule. It's about 20 till 2, but I think this would be a great time to answer questions if anyone has any.
Hey, I don't know if you're ever familiar with the SMC HAS 200 trainer. Have you ever seen that before?
I have not. No.
Okay, it's an older piece of equipment that we've inherited. It's more of a manufacturing. I was just wondering if you could contrast it to the Skill Boss, but it's got some similar elements.
I can tell you on the Skill Boss, what it has, of course, the conveyor, the drive belt, or you can change it out and use a drive train. It has it's got several different kinds of sensors. It's got photo eyes, as well as read switches, and maybe one or two other types of sensors. It has diverters like you would have in a distribution center, 3 different types of diverters to push freight out into a chute to be loaded. There's the vacuum type, there's a push arm type, and then there's the kind of bow and arrow type of diverters. It also has a freight elevator to move freight up to a reject line. So you learn about how to work on a freight elevator. It has the PLC, all the wiring connections. It's got a VFD, and it comes with different types of software. One type is the Cognex software to work with your barcode scanner that's on it. There's also there's a control software where you can turn belts on and off, and then third is Fault Pro, which Amatrol I think offers for a lot of their equipment, that it actually inserts faults for the students to go find what's wrong with it. So it's a pretty cool piece of equipment. It's got a nice price tag on it, but I think it's worth it. Thank you.
Yeah, it sounds very similar to the HAS 200. There's really no needs to have a faults added to this system already. We've got enough as is.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate this, guys.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody else? I think Karen would gladly answer any questions about the National Center as well.
I thought I saw a hand up, but it went down. Oh, there we go.
Hi. Yeah, I was wondering if there's any collaboration or input from the Society of Manufacturing Engineers.
Do you mean with our program?
Yes.
No, we most of our input as far as bodies like that, we get a lot of input from CSCMP, which is for supply chain management professionals, SC Pro, which is also supply chain management professionals, where we get most of our manufacturing, well, other than the Manufacturing Skills Council, because we use their curriculum for their technicians. We used a lot of their curriculum. I was actually on the team that created the test for certification. So we use that in order to set up our curriculum in our LET program. But other than that, all of our manufacturing input actually comes from corporate partners in Central Ohio.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question. Anything else? No?
You did such a great job. There's no questions.
Good. That's what I'll tell myself, Karen. Thank you.
Ah, sounds good to me. Well, thank you. Again, we hope that you will join us for our other 4 webinars. And I do want to mention too that, we'll be pushing out lots of other opportunities. We hope to have a workshop at High Tech, and we'll be also doing a SIG as well as a significant, it's a specific interest group. I think that's the name. But anyway, stay tuned, stay in contact. Now that we, anybody who, enrolled, I don't know if enrolled is the right word, but signed up for this webinar, now that we have your email address, we're going to be really diligent about keeping, a listserv where we can send out information. And if you've got any ideas or things that you think you'd like to potentially partner with us on, or see if there's ways that, we could collaborate, don't hesitate to shoot me an email, Wendy an email, or in fact, any of our co-PIs as well.